Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to let you know that GYET is now on Patreon. So at GYET, if you join us on Patreon, you get access to features, benefits that no one else can get. You won't see this on YouTube. You won't hear this on Spotify. If you sign up at the startup level, because this is all about entrepreneurship, the startup level, you'll get ad-free episodes, except for my ad reads, with outtakes included. So you'll get to see when we stumble, we make funny comments, we make mistakes. You'll be able to see all of that and laugh along with us. You will access the Patreon founder level members' questions to the experts. So I'll get into a little bit more of that later, but you will have more inside access to these entrepreneurs that I'm interviewing. You'll also get a PDF of my handwritten episode notes with questions that I have planned to ask and maybe some that I didn't get to during the episode. Now, if you want to join and support at the founder level, this is where you'll get everything at the startup level, but you'll also get access to a live updating Google Sheet with show information and filming dates. Why that is important is because you will have the opportunity at this level to be backstage while the episode is filming. So you won't have to wait until the episode comes out to watch. You can watch from backstage and just be right there right now. Also, you'll have 5 of you will have the opportunity to ask the entrepreneur that I'm interviewing a question right then and there. And also, this entrepreneur might have some special gifts and incentives for you, so you will be there live in case they want to drop any links or promo codes or gifts to you. So these are the ways that you can support GYET here on Patreon. I would really appreciate that support. It helps me grow the channel, bring more entrepreneurs that you want to hear from on. So thank you so much for your time and enjoy the episode. This is Get Your Entrepreneurship Together, where you'll find stories, tips, and value from successful entrepreneurs who are out there crushing it. Here's a short preview of this week's episode.
But one of the things about relationships is you don't learn everything you need to know from your family, even if you came from a good family. And one of the things that I want people to know is that grief is a healer.
Obviously, that's not real life, but does it actually echo something that happens in real life? Like, you've got to screw up first in order to know what's good and what's not, and then you go fix it.
Fun needs to be on purpose. It needs to be part of our checklist as well. Make sure we do something that we enjoy.
And welcome back to the show, everyone. My name is Brian Elam. I will be your host here on this episode of the Be Successful series here on Get Your Entrepreneurship Together. And today we have a very special guest. Dr. Mark Hicks is here with us today. We're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to be talking about love. We're going to be talking about the epidemic of loneliness that is out there that not just entrepreneurs can experience. We're going to get into all of these subjects as well as his own story to help you understand why Dr. Mark has the ability to speak to you, help you lift your relationships, and in essence, lift your life and business. So without further ado, we're going to bring Mark up onto the stage. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on. I can't wait for this conversation.
Hey, thank you. It's my pleasure. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So let's just start from the beginning. I want people to really understand more about you and your background, your experience, because if we understand where you're coming from, we can better understand your teachings and then where we're going. So how did you come to understand what a good relationship is, what it is not, and how did you start to work through that?
Well, that's a winding road. I didn't always know what I know now. I was fortunate starting out. I had a wonderful family growing up, parents that loved me, a great situation. No family's perfect, of course, but I had a great one, and very fortunate in that. But one of the things about relationships is you don't learn everything you need to know from your family, even if you came from a good family. And you especially don't know everything you need to know if you came from a dysfunctional family or certainly an abusive background or anything like that. Relationships are a learned skill set, and I learned that the hard way. Even though I came from a good family, I ended up early in my life in a first marriage that was completely toxic, disastrous situation, very painful experience that ended in divorce. And I still have the emotional scars to show for that. And that ended up planting some seeds in my life. I didn't fully understand it at the time, but looking back, I can see how that really made me want to know what is love and how do we live that out, not only in marriage and family, but throughout our life, friendships and coworkers and loving what we do for a living and just loving life. How do we find that place where love is a reality in our life in every area? I come from a professional background that really is a two-track background. I have a master's degree in mental health counseling, have worked in hospitals and clinics as a therapist in a number of different settings. I also have a background in theology and spirituality and have worked in ministry and in mission work. And so, coming from a background where I have experienced a good, healthy family and a childhood, experienced a toxic first marriage, have an education and background in counseling and in theology and ministry and spirituality. All those things kind of came together to lead me down this path of studying and analyzing what is love. How do we make this happen in our life? How do we build these healthy relationships? And I'm living that out too. It's a practice. We never achieve it fully. It's always a practice our whole life. But love is a learned skill set that we're continuing to learn and practice. And now I am remarried. I have a second marriage. I swore I would never marry again after the disaster of my first marriage. But I met Heather and changed my mind. And I very often say that I've experienced a bad marriage and a good marriage, and good is better. And so we need to learn how to have these good relationships. And as I said, not just in marriage, that's especially important, but also in every area of life, including in our business life, in our working life, because it's a very different relationship to have a relationship with your coworker versus a spouse or a child, of course, but the same principles are there. The same principles that guide us into family relationships guide us into every relationship, and including with coworkers, that we can go to work every day and enjoy our job, enjoy who we work with.
Excellent. And I just want to dive right into that. So, what are these principles, these guidelines of a good relationship? Some people could call them pillars. You could call them components of a good relationship. Let's get into some of those.
Yeah, that's how I refer to them in my book. The author of the book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. I'm happy to say that while that was self-published last year, that version is no longer available because it was just picked up by Morgan James Publishing. So at the end of this year, first of next year, it will be available nationwide through Morgan James. I'm very excited about that. But in that book, I teach the 5 components of love. And as I said, you could call them pillars, you can call them aspects. But the reason I use the word components is I want to emphasize that they all work together, that they're all important. We have a tendency sometimes to just pick and choose the ones that come natural to us, the ones that we learned growing up in our family, and think that that is love. And then we wonder what's wrong. We really need all 5 components. If we practice all 5, we can build healthy relationships, even if you've come from a dysfunctional family, even if you've been through a divorce, because it is that learned skill set. And when you know and learn and practice the 5 components, then you can build it.
Before, and my audience might be mad at me for this, but before we jump into that, I want to know, is there any point where there has to be a decision is made that you want to do this, you want to get better at this, or it won't work?
I think some people, through the hardships of life, get pushed into it. As I've talked with people, they say, "Yeah, I learned that, but I learned it the hard way because I went down this path." And so sometimes life is a teacher, and we can pick some of these up. But I really think it does take a true effort to learn what love is, because there is a tendency to just assume we learned everything from our family,
Mm.
especially if we came from a healthy family. It's kind of like walking. We learned it, but we learned it before we can remember learning it, and so it just kind of comes natural. And we assume love is like that too. We learned it. We learned it before we even remember learning it because we came from a healthy family, if we did, and it just seems like that's just something we should just know. But then we get into life and we wonder what's wrong. and and the answer is you're not necessarily doing anything wrong, it's just incomplete. That we usually learn, especially if we came from a good family, one, two, three of these components, maybe four if we're lucky, but it really takes all five. And very often people are missing one or two. They're living good lives, they're doing the right thing, they're good people, they're trying hard, but they're just missing these one or two components they don't even know about. And that's why I think it's so important to study relationships and to think about it and learn things like this, because we learn so much for our jobs. We go to trade school, we go to college, we go to universities, we go to continuing education. We do so many things for our jobs to continue to improve and to stay up to date on the things we do for a living. Why would we not do that in our relationships that mean so much to what we do in life?
Yeah, it's a great point. You put the effort in to get where you want to go in your career. Why would you not put the effort in to get where you want to go in your relationship life, both personal and professional?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So let's just dive in, man. What are these components of a great relationship?
Well, the first one surprises people. The first component of love is grief. And that's not what
Okay,
people
yeah.
expect.
No, that's not what
Uh,
I expected.
Well, we when we say the word love, we think about relationships. We usually think it's going to be a discussion of bubblegum and butterflies. Everything's just sweet and beautiful, and part of it is that. We'll get to that. But one of the realities of life is that no one gets through life without scars. There is going to be pain in life. That's not being pessimistic. There's great things about life as well, but the reality is some things are going to hurt, and people we love are going to die, and there's going to be setbacks and hardships. And if we're not careful, we can react to that by putting up emotional walls and barriers and defense mechanisms and keeping people at arm's length, pushing people out of our life because we don't want to get hurt. We remember that breakup that we had with that person that we were head over heels for in college, and we keep our even our spouse at arm's length for years, decades, maybe a lifetime, because that hurts so much and we just don't want to get hurt again. We keep people at arm's length and push people away and sabotage the very relationships that we want and even have in our life that could be thriving because we've been hurt along the way. And one of the things that I want people to know is that grief is a healer, that it keeps us connected. It's our comeback story. While it is painful to go through, grief is the comeback story from those hurts. It brings us back into these relationships that can mean so much to us, even though we've been hurt in life. And some things in life are extraordinarily painful, that could really damage every area of our life. But one of the things that I always say, and always try to get folks to understand, is that even though painful things happen, it may be so painful it leaves a hole in our heart, but you can live a really good life with a hole in your heart. And if we learn that, if we learn that life is painful, we're not going to be able to undo the hardships of life and the tragedies of life. We can't necessarily fix everything. It's not the goal. But through grief, we heal enough that even though we may live the rest of our life with a hole in our heart, we can still live a really good life. We can stay connected. We can have relationships. We can still do good things and connect with people in our family and at work and throughout life, because we've been through that grief process and it enables us to stay connected.
Hmm. And do you find that, when you're talking with people and you're working with them through that grieving process, that hole that they have for that loss or that hurt that they've gone through, that hole over time, although it never goes away, like you said. But do you find that it shrinks for them?
Time can be a healer, but it's not automatic. It's not a given. You still have to go through the grief process. The grief process takes time. And so, in some ways, time can be a healer. But I've seen people that kept their defenses up their entire life. I
Hmm.
worked with a lady years ago when I was working in a clinic, a counseling clinic in a hospital. She was 72 years old, and she had lived her entire life bitter, angry, defensive. She had been married, had kids, but had a terrible relationship with all of them. Always kept people at arm's length, always defensive and looking for a fight. And that had just really worn on her over the years. And by the time she got up in years, into her 70s, she was just worn down so much that it had really taken a toll on her. So she came into this program. And long story short, it all traced back to a falling out she had with her sister 50 years prior. When she was in her early 20s, her sister and she and her sister had a falling out. They'd been very close growing up, been best friends growing up. They had a falling out, and she had the thought, if my sister can betray me, anyone can betray me.
Mm.
Everyone will betray me. And she never trusted again. She never connected again. Always kept people at a defensive in a defensive mode, keeping them at arm's length throughout her whole life. And so, while time is a healer, you have to do the work of grief in that process of time. You just think about how her life would have been different if she'd have been able to grieve that loss of her sister and realize that, yes, that pain's always going to be there. There's always going to be a hole in her heart because she lost her sister in such a dramatic way and a painful way. But you can still live a really good life, even though you had that bad experience. She didn't realize that and
Mm.
always lived looking for a fight. So, yes, it takes time, but it takes grief.
Perfect. Exactly what I was looking for. All right. So we got the weird one out of the way
Yeah.
that we weren't expecting. So, what about the second component of a great relationship?
That's emotion. The second component is emotion. That's the one everyone knows. That's what you're expecting. That we have to have an emotional connection. This is at times the bubblegum and butterflies. It just feels good to be on that same wavelength, that emotional connection. We love that. Now, it's easier for some people than others. Some people are naturally emotional people. They share their emotions very freely and easily, and it just feels natural. For other folks, it's a little more difficult. They're a little more cerebral, a little more introverted, perhaps, or just not as comfortable with the sharing of the feelings. And that's okay. You don't have to change your personality. It's a practice. And that's what I always tell folks that are not comfortable with the emotions. Just practice it. It's like any other skill set. You'll get better. Just learn to say, I love you. And for some people, especially if you come from an abusive childhood, love can be a loaded word. It can be a word that was used as a weapon. And so that may be hard. Okay, then say things like, I appreciate you, or say thank you when someone does something nice for you. Those little acts of kindness, just learning how to share your feelings so that the people that you care about know that you care, that they don't have to wonder about it. They don't have to guess. They know, and they can actually have evidence through your words and your actions that you care about them. That's an important emotional bond. For some people, they don't need any of this discussion. They know how to do it. But for those that don't, just practice it. You'll get better at it.
Yeah. And you're right. Even if you grew up in a great family, a family that supported you, was there for you, never was abusive in any way, but maybe they didn't express how they felt like that. You wouldn't know how to do it or do it properly. But yeah, that I could totally see how that would be the case. And just one more thing about this idea of expressing love. Now, is a part of this particular component not only the expression of love, but being able to, or emotions, excuse me, express emotions, but also to be able to experience them?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. That's a skill that people have to learn as well, particularly if you've been through some tough times. You've got those walls up that we were discussing earlier. Sometimes we're afraid to let ourselves feel the emotions, and that can be pretty scary if you've been hurt before. That again gets back to the grief process. Once we've kind of grieved through that, we can be a little more vulnerable because that is our comeback story. We know we can come back from these things, and so grief helps us get there. But yeah, it's a practice to learn how to open ourselves enough to share our emotions and to receive that from other people and to accept it. Some people are kind of deflecting. You try to give them a compliment and they say no, no, and they no, learn how to accept that, appreciate it, enjoy it, and be grateful that people are showing that they care.
Yeah, absolutely. Allow yourself to be seen as valuable,
Exactly.
because you are.
Yeah.
You absolutely are valuable. So allow yourself to be seen as that and
Yeah.
acknowledged as that. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So all right, so we've got grief, we have emotions. So we're on to number 3. What is the third component of a great relationship?
Third component is practicality. Emotion brings us together. Practicality keeps us together. This is the way we live together well. This is making the good decisions. Everybody knows about the emotional side of relationships, whether you're good at it or not, whether you're comfortable or not. We know about it. Uh, Practicality is a little more difficult sometimes because they don't make romantic comedies about the practical guy that makes good decisions, and so we don't really think about that in relation to love. But making good decisions, living together well, whether that be at home or whether that be how we treat each other at the office or on the job site or whatever it is, living together well is the practical side of love, and that means communicating, which is a learned skill set. Communication skills is learning how to communicate with people. Um, if you're a particularly married couple or in a romantic partnership, making financial decisions. That's a really important aspect of your relationship, is making financial decisions together. Dealing with mental health issues, things like depression and anxiety, they take a toll on us as individuals, but they take a toll on our relationships as well. And they are treatable conditions. And so I always say that, taking care of ourselves physically, emotionally, in every way is part of the practical side of relationships. Taking care of each other, taking care of the relationship itself, communicating well, all these things are practical aspects. You may have heard someone say before that I love them, but I can't live with them.
Mm,
That means they've got that emotional connection, but they've neglected the third component of practicality. They can't live together well. And that's a terribly sad place to be. When there is an emotional connection, there is that aspect of love that we feel very deeply, but on a practical level, they haven't made the right decisions to live together well. And that doesn't have to be that way. Learning that practicality is an aspect of love, and just as important as the others, is an important aspect of living together the right way. Emotion brings us together. Practicality keeps us together.
perfect. And I want to go back just 1 second. You made the analogy of the romantic comedy, and normally that, we all know the setup. They find each other. Typically,
Hmm.
the guy screws it up somehow,
Yeah.
and then they come back together in the end, and it's all rainbows and butterflies. But is that, obviously that's not in real life, but does it actually echo something that happens in real life? Like, you've got to screw up first in order to know what's good and what's not, and then you go fix it.
Well, you're going to. We're going to make mistakes. No relationship's going to be perfect. It's always a practice, and so that's part of the journey. That's part of learning. Uh, and if we allow that in relationships, we understand that from a practical side, we get that people do make mistakes and we have to learn to fix that. Also, from the practical side, while we're on that topic, there are some relationships that have to end. That while we allow mistakes and we allow stuff to go wrong and we work together to fix it, we don't allow abuse.
Mm.
No one should be in an abusive relationship. And that's part of the practical side of love, is that every relationship cannot continue, because abuse is just not something anyone should live with. And that comes as a surprise to some people, because they believe, since I'm a relationship coach, that I think every relationship should continue. I think every relationship can, if everyone in the relationship is practicing these five components. But there are some people that are toxic, abusive people, and those relationships have to end. And that's a practical reality. But prior to that line, we also have to say there's mistakes. There's ways we have to work through things, and part of that process does bring us together. It helps us to live that practical life together.
Yep. Totally get it. Thank you for going a little bit deeper into that
Yeah,
analogy
yeah.
there for me. Appreciate that. All right. So that was practicality. And what do we got for the next component of a great relationship?
The fourth component is acceptance. And while that is referring to the acceptance that we just talked about of other people and the mistakes they make, it really is about accepting and loving ourselves first. That the first element of love is to love ourselves. Brene Brown's done some great research on this, some great writing. Other people have as well, but she's the most well known for it at this point, for writing about this. That you cannot love other people more than you love yourself. That's the ceiling. You can't love others more than you love yourself. And so many times people think that they are going to love themselves more because they get other people to love them. And that never works. We're always chasing that and trying to act a certain way and be a certain way to get people to like us in order to love ourselves. It doesn't work that way. We can only love other people as much as we love ourselves. The reason for that is love is organic. It's not a commodity like money. If we need more money, we can get a second job. We can take out a loan. We can steal money, but I don't recommend that one.
You can ask the government to print more.
We can ask them to print more. There's so many ways money can come along. Some good ideas, some are not good ideas, but there's so many options. And with love, there is not. There's only one way, and that is organically. It grows within us. And so we begin by loving ourselves and growing in that love and that appreciation, that self-worth of knowing that we are worth loving. And then we can start to see that same worth in other people and connect with that and appreciate that in them.
It's interesting. And this brings me to a question. I don't think, I didn't write this down, and was just wondering as we were talking, is this a hierarchical structure? These components, like, does it have to go 1, 2, 3 in order to find the healing? Or
No, it does not. And in
okay.
fact, some people are going to be good at some of them just naturally. And so the idea is just to conceptualize, where is it going wrong? So no, they do interconnect. Obviously, emotion and practicality are kind of balancing elements. Grief is sort of a foundational thing to overcome the hurts of life and the struggles of life in order to be more vulnerable in our emotional connections. They all work together, but no, it's not a stair step.
Okay.
They're all necessary. And sometimes people, if we're not careful, will start to think, well, I'll do the first three and that'll be the most important. No, they're all equally important. They're all necessary, and they're all a practice. And so with acceptance, it's the same way. It's a foundational idea that we have to love ourselves before we can love other people. And so many times we're looking for that emotional connection in order to try to love ourselves, and that's just backwards. That we have to love ourselves in order to be able to love other people.
Yep. And that's exactly why I asked that hierarchical question, because so of what you just said, you have to love yourself before you can love someone else.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad we hit on that and went down that road a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then let's see, we're on to number 5 already. So what is that? What is that 5th component? Not in any particular order.
Not in any particular order. It is passion. And when we use the word passion in discussion of love, we often think about intimacy and marriage and romantic relationships, and that's part of it. But what we're really talking about is a passion for life. Passion is the wind in our sails. It is the adventure of life. It is the enjoyment of life. It puts the fuel in our engine. It gets us up every day looking to see what the day will bring. This is where we love what we do for a living. We love the people we work with. We love coming home to our family. We enjoy life. And that's easy to forget
Mhm.
because life is really serious. And we're not going to ignore that. That's why practicality is the third component of love, because life is serious. And life has its fair share of tragedies, and sometimes more than our fair share of tragedies. And that's why grief is the first component of love. We don't forget those things. But let's not forget about passion and enjoyment and just having fun. There are a lot of people that get into their relationships, whether it be their marriage or family or their job, and at first it's just great. It's fantastic. And then over the years, you check off the list. A married couple, they have kids, they get a promotion at work, they're making more money, they buy the house, they're checking off the list of things you're supposed to accomplish. And they get into their 30s or 40s and they think, is this it? This is what we're doing, and it just becomes a grind. No matter how great it is, we love our jobs, hopefully, but every job sometimes is a grind. And when sometimes we get to a place and we think, "Is this it?" And that's where we've missed the component of passion, of just remembering to have fun. Enjoy the day as much as you can. Yes, sometimes they're going to be serious, sometimes it's going to be tragic, but not every day. Some of them can just be fun. Some can be enjoyable. And when we keep that element of fun in our relationships, that element of passion in all of our relationships, it just keeps that spark. It keeps that wind in our sails, and it keeps us enjoying the relationships that we're in. That we're not just in them, we're not just doing the things we have to do to stay in them, but we're actually enjoying being in those relationships.
Mhm. So, just from a practicality sense, what are some things that people can do to increase their passion or increase the fun that they're having within their relationships? Any ideas?
First of all, just look for it, because it's so easy to go through your day into the routine and just not notice the things that are fun, the things that are enjoyable. To
Mm.
get through the day, doing your checklist, doing your to do list, coming home, doing the chores, getting dinner, helping kids with the homework, checking everything off the list every day, and just getting into that routine. Sometimes we just forget to look for it.
Mm.
Fun needs to be on purpose. It needs to be part of our checklist as well. Make sure we do something that we enjoy. And when we do have things we enjoy, make time for them. Sometimes we think, well, we'll just do that when we have time. Make time. Put that on your list of things to do and enjoy doing things with your friends, with your family, with your spouse, with your coworkers. Make time to do things, at least occasionally, just so you have fun. And some people may even say, well, I don't even know what I enjoy. And to those folks, I say, congratulations, you get to just wing it. Just try stuff. If you've reached a point in your life you don't even know what you enjoy anymore, you're just in such a grind and such a routine in life, you don't know what is your passion, you don't know the things you enjoy about life, then just try things. Just go do stuff and find out if you like it. And that can be a wild ride in itself. Uh, Whatever your friends are doing, go do that with them and see if you like it. You may not, that's okay. But you may find you really enjoy some things in life. Make sure we put it as a priority, just like all the other things that we do for our relationships. Make sure having fun together is part of that.
Mm. Yeah, so important. So important to enjoy the life that you have. Make the
Yeah.
time. I love the fact you said make the time for it. So many people get bogged down, like you said, in the daily routine, the daily grind, and they think fun should be completely outside of that kind of structured, going to work at this time and this time, home around this time. They think fun should be outside of that because fun is supposed to be fun,
Yeah.
spontaneous, different,
Yeah.
whatever. Well, especially in, a busy American lifestyle, that's not always the case. You don't have that luxury. So I'm really glad you made the point of making time or scheduling fun.
Yeah. I mean, if we could do something, let's say we could just take a pill that we knew would make us physically healthier, that would make us mentally healthier, emotionally healthier, and would help our relationships. That's probably something most people would want. Well, that's exactly what fun does. When we're enjoying ourselves and we have some fun in our life, we have humor in our life, it makes us physically healthier, it makes us emotionally and mentally healthier, and it helps our relationships. It's one of the best things you can do for every area of life. And so that deserves some time.
Absolutely. I don't know why, but I have the Mentos commercial going through my head right now. Fun, the
Yeah,
relationship maker.
that's right. It is. It's part of it. And that's the one people really tend to miss, especially if they do come from healthy families.
Mm,
Because if they've come from a good, healthy background, they probably know how to have emotional connections, and they probably know how to to communicate and to take care of themselves and to do the practical things of keeping a family or a community together. They probably have been through some tough times as a family and learned how to grieve, at least to some extent. And they probably have learned some self worth if they were raised in a very healthy family that kind of nurtured that idea. And so a lot of those things kind of come naturally, especially if you've come from a very healthy background. This is the one a lot of people miss, that they just get to a place and they think, I'm doing everything right. What's missing? And very often it's that one. It's you've lost sight of just having fun, of enjoying all these things you're working for.
mm. So true. So true. All right. Well, guys, there you go. There's the 5 components of a great relationship. Doesn't matter if we're talking romantic, friends, or even work. Those principles can apply. And if you're unsure how to apply those principles, well, you heard it. The book is going to be coming out very soon. So be on the lookout for that. And you also, of course, just connect with Dr. Mark and get into his world as well. You know?
Yeah, I have if you go to my website, markahicks.com, make sure you get my middle initial in there, markahicks.com. I have a free ebook available on my website that gives you a brief rundown of these 5 components of love, just as I've described today. A brief rundown of all 5. So until the book comes out, you can get that free ebook and then continue to visit my website, and I'll make sure I have release dates and pre-orders and all those kind of things available on my website.
There you go. One stop hub. Okay, so we've got the great components of a great relationship. We know what those are, 1 through 5, not in any particular order. And I want to jump into the entrepreneurship realm more
Yep.
specifically now when it comes to this epidemic of loneliness that's out there.
Yep.
Because as entrepreneurs, and with anyone really, but this show obviously focuses on entrepreneurship, there is a sense that what we're out here doing, nobody else really understands. So we can't just go talk to our spouse about the inner workings of marketing or uh, team dynamics or KPIs or all of those things because they'll just look at you and they'll head tilt like a confused dog.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
it comes to the point where you feel like you can't talk to anybody about this stuff, and it creates that loneliness. So, what are some things that entrepreneurs can do to help combat this, feel seen, feel heard, and just feel better about their whole process?
Yeah. I think one of the things, going back to the passion, even if you can't really talk about the specifics of your job because it's too technical, people will still enjoy hearing you talk about how much you enjoy it, to seeing the passion you have in that job, and the feeling of accomplishments that you have in that, by completing that project, seeing the excitement. If you're living it in a passionate way, if you're enjoying it, if you're loving what you do, and you let that show, yeah, nobody may understand the technical side of your job, but everybody understands reaching a goal.
Mm,
Everybody understands loving what you do and enjoying the people you're with. And if we learn to have these kind of relationships, then there's always stories that come out of the relationships. Even if it's not a technical story about the job, we can enjoy the stories that come out of the relationships in the job. Because there are some jobs that people work in a very isolated way, but most of the time we're connecting with somebody. And if we're building these friendships, building these coworker relationships, and we just enjoy that, there's going to be usually plenty of stories that come out of that that people are going to enjoy discussing with us.
Mm, that's great. That is a great way to look at it. And, because I normally would have just said, oh, join a group of entrepreneurs, like an entrepreneur support group,
Yeah,
you know?
and you can certainly, yeah, find some people that are, if you can, find some people that are of like mind and kind of understand. But you can go home and talk to your spouse. You can go to talk to your friends, even if they know nothing about your job. If you love what you do and you let it show and show that passion, everybody enjoys a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. And you don't have to get into the weeds of the
Now,
details because that's what they don't understand. But like you said, everybody loves a good story. Everybody loves a
yeah,
win, which is
yeah,
something we talk about quite often on this show is everybody loves a comeback story or the completion to a story.
yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one more question, and this
yeah.
is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of off topic, but still on topic. Um, a lot of entrepreneurs, thought leaders, coaches, they want to write their own book too. They want to be an author. How did you get your book to a major publisher? Like, how does that happen?
That's an interesting story. I self-published in the beginning, had it on Amazon, uh, but one of my jobs, in addition to being an author and a speaker, I'm also a ghostwriter. And so I'm writing other people's books, and I work for a ghostwriting agency as well. And it's through my ghostwriting and my connections with the ghostwriting agency that I was introduced to the folks at Morgan James Publishing and
Hmm.
was able to submit my book to them, and that was accepted. So you can just submit to publishers, and you can go to Morgan James and submit on their website. I was of good fortune to be able to have some introduction to them in the process of ghostwriting. And I'll say, if you want to write a book and you struggle with that, get in touch with me. I'm a ghostwriter as well.
Hey, there you go. There you go. So we talked about the components of a relationship. So what are some of the components that a publisher's looking for in a book that they want to help release?
Every publisher is probably looking for different things. I don't know that I can speak to all publishers, but a couple of things. Obviously, they want something that is within a genre. And so sometimes we think, well, I need something that's completely new and never heard of before. No, you need to have maybe a unique way of expressing it, a compelling way of expressing it. Uh, but I'm not the first person to talk about healthy relationships, uh, and be don't try to be a person who is writing an area no one's ever heard of before, as if that's going to make you stand out in the crowd. Be in a genre, find where your niche is, and work in that area. The other thing I would say is be coachable. And sometimes when people work very hard on a book, and you don't write a book without working very hard, it's a painstaking process and it's a creative process. Sometimes we put so much into that that we get a little defensive, and
Hmm.
that's not going to help you. Be creative. Uh, Work your niche and find out how you can contribute in that. And then once you start working with publishers or with editors and people in the industry, be coachable. Listen, they are there for a reason. They're there to help you. And so don't get so caught up in that creative process that you think this is what has to be. Listen to the professionals around you and be coachable and learn as you go.
Great. Great advice, great feedback from a guy that is obviously in the industry and is out there doing it. Perfect. Well, Mark, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show, man. This has been a great conversation. Lots of value dropped here, and just really appreciate it, sir.
My pleasure. I love being here. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, you know what to do. Like the show, share the show, subscribe to the channel. Again, share the show. You never know whose life you can positively impact with just a simple, free share of great content like what you just heard here today from Dr. Mark. Like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff, and peace. We'll see you in the next one.